Redistribution destroys the economy without changing the distribution of income. The poor are going to get a lot poorer because of these policies. And income growth is going to be a lot lower. The rich are going to get poorer, and the poor are going to get poorer, but the poor are going to get poorer a lot faster than the rich are getting poorer.
Dr. Arthur Laffer is known as the father of supply-side economics. He designed the famous Laffer Curve that showed that higher taxes don't necessarily mean higher tax revenue for governments. A chief economist at the Office of Management and Budget in the 1970s, then later an economic advisor to President Reagan, then President Trump. He was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom by Trump in 2019. Dr. Arthur Laffer, pleasure to have you in NTD Business.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure for me.
Dr. Laffer, a lot I want to speak with you about, but first of all, I think all Americans are worried about inflation. We see the prices of things rising at a record rate. First of all, how much longer do you think this is going to run? And number two, what's the main driver behind it, in your opinion?
Yeah, let me just simply say, I don't know how long it's going to run. I don't know whether it's permanent or not. I really don't. I could tell you all sorts of stories, but you wouldn't want to hear those. Part of the reason why it has come on to being right now is because of the huge drop in prices in 2020 when the system came into play. And you've got a very low base on a lot of numbers, and some of those are going to reverse themselves in the next 6 months or a year. So I think you're going to see an abating of the inflation numbers, but I don't think you're going to see prices going to fall back to where they were now. A classic of this is lumber. Lumber prices just went way up through the ceiling, and now I think they're back down to below their lows. So, you know, you've got a lot of these type of very temporal, circumstantial situations that make it look like there's a lot of inflation. The parts that worry me are wages do appear to be rising and do appear to have risen, and I have a very hard time believing that those prices are going to be reversed and go back. So there is some inflation, I think, set into motion. It is not my primary worry, to be honest. It's not. However, it's a worry of a lot of people, and all of the business people I talk with tell me that at the ground level on businesses, prices are going straight up. So they're all saying that. So there's a lot of circumstantial evidence, and the numbers themselves show a price, but I'm not concerned personally. It's not my biggest concern of inflation. If it were to come into being, and I'm not saying it's not going to come in, if it were to come into being, it would be a very serious problem.
We see the Atlanta Fed. We also have Morgan Stanley last week. Now today, Goldman Sachs all slashing their third quarter GDP forecasts. A lot of people talking about stagflation. You think it's a possibility, and what does it mean if we get there?
Well, let me, if I can, Paul, go through with you what the real problem is, if I may.
Yeah, of course.
The real problem is this government spending is totally out of control, completely out of control. Whether you're talking about the first $3.5 billion under Trump and then the next $3 billion, I think we're up to, I think, 10 or 11, 12 trillion dollars, a very, very large. All of these sums are what's called transfer payments. Transfer payments are when I take from someone and give it to someone else who didn't earn it, okay? Whether that be extended unemployment benefits, increase in food stamps, rent subsidies, all of these programs combined are all transfer payments. Now, let me go through the theorem of transfer payments with you because it's really important to understand it intellectually. A transfer payment is when you take from someone who has a little bit more and you give to someone who has a little bit less. All right, that's purely and simply a transfer payment, and that's what all these 10 trillion have been. That's all it is. And by the way, a lot of it's gone to business too, with the forgiving of the loans and all that other nonsense. Right? But when you take from someone who has a little bit more, you reduce that person's incentives to produce, and that person will produce a little bit less. You follow me? When you give to someone who has a little bit less, you provide that person with an alternative source of income other than working, and that person too will produce a little bit less. The theorem here, and it's math, it's not left-wing, it's not right-wing, it's not Republican, it's not Democrat, liberal or conservative. Whenever you redistribute income, you always reduce total income, period. Now, the lemma from this theorem, which is what's coming in right now, is the more you redistribute, Paul, the greater will be the fall in total income. That's the lemma. I'm not going to prove that to you. But the limit function I am going to prove to you is if you were able to redistribute income out of Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren and all these people, if you were able to redistribute income so that everyone came out exactly the same, all right, there will be no income whatsoever. Let me explain it to you so you see it. In order to get everyone to come out exactly equal, what you have to do is you have to tax everyone above the average income 100% of the excess. And you have to subsidize everyone below the average income up to the average income so that everyone comes out exactly the same. Now, if you actually did that, if you actually taxed everyone who earned above the average income 100% of the excess, and if you actually subsidize everyone below the average income up to the average income, I'll stipulate today, counselor, everyone will come out exactly equal at zero income. Why would you work if you don't make any advantage whatsoever for working? Now, this is especially prone to the lowest income group earners in the country because their jobs are not fun. They really aren't fun like yours and my jobs are great fun. Not that I'd work for zero, but, you know, I love my job. These people don't. So that if they can make as much money not working as they can working, they're not going to work. After not working for a year or 2 or 3 or 4, they lose all the requisite skills to be able to be productive and work. And then they've lost themselves to the society for eternity. These are the poor, the minorities, the disenfranchised, the undereducated. These are the people at risk of being marginalized and thrown into the trash bin by this spending stuff for eternity. They've lost their lives, their chances of ever advancing. That to me is terrible. It's bad income redistribution, all right? And it's also bad economics. Now, we did a big transfer payment at the end of Bush in 2008, $1 trillion. We did a big one at the beginning of Obama, $1 trillion, a little bit over $1 trillion. I think it was $2.2 trillion. You can go back and see my pieces in the Wall Street Journal and elsewhere on this. And I said it would slow down growth. The 8 years of Obama plus the first year or so of Trump, because obviously it was an extension of Obama, we never had growth rates of 3% or higher. Not 1 year was it 3% or higher. Given the depths of the crash in 2008, we should have had very high growth. It was because of the stimulus spending that caused the growth rates to taper off, and it inures to the long run detriment of the economy. And the stimulus spending of Obama and Bush was baby play compared to Schumer and Pelosi and Biden. It's baby play. This is going to really damage the economy for a long way to come in real terms. If you tax people who work and you pay people not to work, don't be surprised, Paul, if you find a lot of people not working. I'm not going way over your head on this, am I?
No, but this is quite ironic because whether you look at the Federal Reserve's mandate or a lot of the narrative coming from the current administration, a lot of the excuses for the current spending is to create jobs. But But the interesting thing is there are so many jobs available at the moment. There've never been more jobs available, but it doesn't seem anybody's taking up on them.
Well, they don't care. That's why I said they're incompetent in the job they're doing, and there shouldn't be a Fed. There really shouldn't be. We should have a monetary policy, someone to invest, make sure banks aren't cheating on their reserves and stuff, all the regulatory, that stuff. That should be done. But this type of stuff that the Fed's doing at $5 trillion in loan, all this stuff is just garbage. Controlling interest rates the way they try to do is just nonsense. They don't know what they're doing, and they're doing enormous damage to the long run of the U.S. economy. And it's very sad because, unfortunately, these people aren't going to bear the consequences of their own actions. That's why I want to put all government officials on commission. No, I do. I mean, why shouldn't they bear the consequences of their silly actions? I don't mind government officials making lots and lots of money, Paul. I really don't, as long as I do too. But when they spend other people's money, there's no amount they'll spend unless they bear consequences. And they don't bear the consequences of their actions. And that's why I really think they should be paid on commission.
I feel for somebody of my generation, we don't know anything beyond this type of demand side stimulus that we've been seeing. This is all we've ever heard of. Stimulate the demand side, give people money, and it brings the economy back to life again. Is there an alternative?
Well, yes, it's of course. How about for the people from whom you take the money that you give to other people to have demand? Don't they demand less? Let's imagine I take $100 from Joe and I give $100 to Bill. It's very true that Bill will spend more than he otherwise would have. That's very true. But won't Joe spend less than he would have? And won't the two exactly offset each other? And the only thing is that now Joe has less income and therefore won't work as much, and Bill's getting paid off like a transfer, and he won't work as much either. So there are no income effects, there's no increase in demand, and the substitution effects make everyone produce less, which is why I did the transfer theorem with you. Government spending is taxation. And, you know, I tried to explain, maybe, if you want me to go 1 second, try to explain it the way I did to my students?
Please.
I used to tell my students, if I ran this class the way your government runs your country, what I would do is I'd flunk all the A students out, and I'd give all the F students scholarships. Now, before you giggle, my A students happen to be a little bit smarter than my F students. So once I changed the rules, my A students are able to get lower grades than my F students because they don't randomly make the mistake ever of guessing a correct answer. They still get all the scholarships. The F students are still flunked out just the way before. I haven't changed the distribution of grades one iota, but what have I done? I've destroyed the entire quality of the educational process. Redistribution destroys the economy without changing the distribution of income. The poor are going to get a lot poorer because of these policies. And income growth is going to be a lot lower. The rich are going to get poorer, and the poor are going to get poorer, but the poor are going to get poorer a lot faster than the rich are getting poorer. Economic growth is the only solution for a problem of poverty and minority displacement. That's the only thing there is. Minimum wage at $15 an hour. How silly is that? How silly is that? Why not $500 an hour? So no one works. I mean, it's stupid. It's just stupid on the face of it. What you need to be able to do is have these people get the requisite skills to be able to earn above the minimum wage. Then they have the skills, they can do it. But you know, if it makes it $15 an hour, they'll never get that first job, Paul. And if they don't get that first job, after a while, you know, they stay unemployed, they become unemployable. After being unemployable for a couple of years, they become hostile. And then you have to spend a fortune protecting yourself from them. This is not a new story, and I'm sorry none of you know how to go to a good university and get taught what is supply-side economics. People respond to incentives. If you tax people who work and pay people who don't work, duh. Have you ever heard of an economy taxed into prosperity? Have you ever heard of a poor man spending himself into wealth? No, and you never will, because it doesn't work that way.
It looks like they're going to go ahead with these stimulus packages, or so-called stimulus packages, let's call them. So is there a place where it can be spent beneficially?
Well, you know, are there better places to spend the money than others? Yes, of course. You know, let me go to the principle of government with you, just as a government from 30,000 feet. You know, what you want to do is you want to collect all taxes are bad, but some are worse than others. What you want to do is collect your revenues in the least damaging fashion, all right? And then what you want to do is spend the money in the most beneficial fashion. And then when the damage done by the last dollar of taxes collected is a less than the benefit done by the last dollar spent, you stop already. That's the correct size of government. Now, there are lots of things. You can collect your taxes in bad ways. So if you improve how you collect your taxes, it'll be better for the economy. How you spend your money, you can spend it in really bad ways as well as other ways. You know, how you spend it really matters, and matters a lot. So when you ask me, are there better ways to spend it than this way or that way or the other? Of course there are. But then, of course, how much you spend and how much you tax also matters. How you tax the money, how much you tax and spend, and how you spend the money, all three matter. And they matter a lot. Now, can Pelosi and Schumer and these people figure it out? Not a chance. There's not a chance in hell that a politically driven process trying to buy votes will generate a good outcome. You know that, and I know that. They're going to try to rig all these things to affect future elections, whether they're paying off people who don't work or whatever it is. And that's what they're doing, and they don't bear the consequences of their actions. Now, if you did this, let me put it this way. Let's imagine that if the economy grew at 3% per annum, all the politicians, Congress people would get their pay, all right? If it grows at 4%, double their pay. Woo! But it's 4% now. 5% growth, triple their pay. All right? I mean, they're doing really great. Now, 2% growth, no pay. 1% growth, they have to pay us what we would have paid them at 3% growth, and so on and so on. They'd never vote the way they do. This bill would be dead. There wouldn't be one Democrat, not even a Marxist would go for this. No one would, because it's wrong, wrong, wrong. It's a political hack job that's being done to try to rig elections. And that, unfortunately, is what they're doing. And they don't bear the consequences of those actions. They don't. Their pay is the same no matter whether they vote for the correct way or the bad way. They all get the same pay. And that's not what you want.
You mentioned the Obama administration and the Trump administration, and I think now things have got really accelerated during the pandemic with government spending. What's the end game, or how does this play out over the next 5, 10, 15 years?
You know, the end game is like the beginning. What was the beginning? There is no beginning, and there is no end. What you are seeing is the diminution of the U.S. economy as far as the eye can see. Unfortunately, when you're 81, when you're my age, you will not be living in the type of prosperous, dominant America that you're living in now. And it's very, very sad. But we are tearing about the infrastructure of the U.S. economy and making damn sure that we're not a strong member of the world economy 20, 30 years from now. Let me give you a little lesson, a simple one in China. In 1970, I was the first American to go to China, all right, in 1970. I went with George Shultz and John Ehrlichman. George Shultz and John Ehrlichman. And that was when we started the opening of China. At that time, I think 97% of Chinese production went through state-run enterprises. Had no infrastructure whatsoever. What China has done from 1970 to today, that's 50 years, 51 years, all right? What they've done is they've cut taxes from 97% through state-run enterprises, I think to 2 or 3%. That's called a tax cut. In 1992, they outsourced their monetary policy to Alan Greenspan. That's creating a sound money. As you know, they've opened up their trade. They're now one of the biggest trading nations in the world. So they did tax cuts, sound money, and free trade. The three pillars of supply-side economics. You with me? From 1970 to the present, China has grown at, I think, something like 7.2% per annum, compounded annually. Which, if you take that over 51 years, that's an increase in Chinese real GDP of 33-fold. 33-fold. Take 1.075 to the 51st power, and you get about 33, all right? Now, take a look at the U.S. over this same period. During this same period, the U.S. has grown threefold. You know, take that now, we're going to lower our growth rates quite dramatically with these silly policies. And once you get that out there, there's no getting it back. It's like the genie in the bottle. And China will keep on going. So you tell me what you think is going to happen. You tell me what you think your children, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren are going to be facing when you've got silly people like this not understanding how to create prosperity. You create prosperity by taking government hands off the economy, by letting people produce for their own benefit and for the own benefit of everyone else. It's what Adam Smith called the invisible hand. And when I do the invisible hand, I keep my hands below the screen, okay? But it's there, and it's the way it works. And unfortunately, they're going the wrong way. And there's no justification for the way they're going. We've had experiments in this sand thousands of times in history. And I went through the very simple theory of redistribution with you. It's basic economics, and it's true. People like doing things they find attractive, and they dislike doing things they find unattractive. And taxes makes things more unattractive, and subsidies make things more attractive. So if you make all the bad things more attractive, You make all the good things less attractive. I mean, why do we tax speeders on the freeway? To get them to stop speeding. Why do we tax cigarettes? To get people to stop smoking. All right? I mean, that's why we do it. In the same breath, why do we tax people who earn income? Why do we tax people who employ other people? Payroll taxes. Why do we tax companies that make great products at low cost and have lots of profits? Why do we tax them? We don't tax them to get them to stop earning income. We don't tax them to stop employing other people. We don't tax them to stop making great products at low cost. No, we don't. But do not for a moment think that the same consequences don't occur as occurs with taxes on speeders and taxes on cigarettes. It does. And you will destroy incomes, you will destroy employment, and you will destroy profits and good products. And that's exactly what America is in the throes of doing right now. And you better get someone to change it pretty quick, Paul. Because if you don't, you're going to bear the consequences. People deserve the governments they get. It ain't my problem anymore. I'm 81. It's your problem, Paul. And it's your viewers' problem.
You mentioned the 3 pillars that China implemented over the past 50 years. What's the equivalent that happened here in America in those 3 spaces?
Well, we have cut our highest tax rate in 1950. I think our highest tax rate was 91%. Today, the highest tax rate is 37%. We did pretty well. We have contained inflation. I don't know if you remember what inflation was like when we came into office with Reagan in 1981. The prime interest rate in America was 21.5%. It's not that now. We got it way down. We brought it down. Inflation way down. All that stuff. We've deregulated the economy. Before, airlines were totally regulated. Now the fares are half of what they were, and they're much safer, much better. Trucks, we've done that as well. In 1957, I think only 2 states were right-to-work states. That was Arkansas and Florida. And back then, by the way, Florida was Arkansas, just for the record. All right. Now over half the states in the United States are right-to-work states. If you look at the death tax in states, I think in 1976, there was only 1 state in the United States that didn't have a death tax, and that was Nevada. Now I think 38 or 40 states have gotten rid of their death tax. And I could go on and on and on, how we've really made the economy much, much, much better over this period. And now we're reversing it all. And it's reversed all in the worst of pandering to trying to buy votes. You know, you want to play in this game, it's a serious game in this world. And I'm very, very glad I lived in an America that we were on the ascendancy. It was truth, beauty, and the American way. And that's and I just hope you can reclaim that ground, that high ground for this country going forward, Paul.
Is this what it will take? Will it take a grassroots effort from people? Do people in Washington listen to the people on the ground, or what's it going to take for people to realize this?
Why should they listen if their pay doesn't change? You know, why? If their pay is the same, why should they listen? You know, it's fun spending other people's money. It really is. You imagine it. It's fun. They're not held accountable. Now, how you change it, that's your problem. Grassroots, everything. There are lots of ways they've changed it historically. Very rarely does it work out for the good. You know, almost every revolution fought on planet Earth has been to change the distribution of income. And I don't think any revolution has ever effectively changed the distribution of income. But what they've all succeeded in doing is destroying the entire volume of income. That's what they've all done. Trying to change the distribution of income, they succeed in destroying income, but have had no effect on the distribution of income. People who can't earn income in this society today will probably not be able to earn income in a society 20 years from now if you go through this welfare system. They won't be able to. And sooner or later, the thing clogs like arterial sclerosis and just shuts down the whole system. And you can see it happening in Europe. You can see it happening all over the world. But, you know, the thing is, it never happened to us. But now it appears to be happening to us. And please take the message, if you believe me, take the message to the troops of the planet. And it doesn't have to be, people love working. It's really fun working. It's great working. It's great. And you'll never get a good high-paying job unless you have the low-paying job first, and then you work your way up. Kennedy put it so beautifully, and I'm a Kennedy Democrat, as you probably know, from the 60s. I'm a Reagan Republican, and I'm a Trump Republican, all right? But Kennedy said it so beautifully. He said, the best form of welfare is still a good, high-paying job. No American is ever made better off by trying to pull a fellow American down. And we're all made better off, Paul, whenever any one of us is made better off. Now, as a Kennedy Democrat, went to work with Ronald Reagan. We convinced him of this line. He was really on board with this, loved it. And, you know, we then used the third line of that speech. A rising tide, it raises all boats. A growth economy helps the poor and the rich. It helps everyone. And whenever you go into a society hating one group versus another group, you're going to screw up the whole thing. And you're not going to make your group better, believe me. Hate's not a good model in politics. Doesn't work.
How the narratives have changed. Dr. Arthur Laffer, really appreciate it. Thank you.
My pleasure, Paul. Thank you.